everybody, my name is Callie Morris, and before I get into my nature worship presentation, I wanted to ask a bit of a favor to anyone watching this video. If I give any misinformation or say anything that's not exactly accurate, I would really appreciate it if you guys would tell me so that I can learn for myself and also be able to correct my mistakes. Okay, so let's get into the presentation. So also, you're going to see me moving around a lot like this because I'm still new to the screen recording thing. But what is nature worship? The dictionary definition of nature worship is 1. A system of religion based on the deification and worship of natural forces and phenomena, and 2. A love for nature. But if we were to go a little deeper into the definitions of nature worship, it is the belief that parts of the earth, such as trees, or the sun, river, or animals, were spiritual forces and were treated as gods. Nature worship was not just a religion, it was a lifestyle. While there are many forms of ancient nature worship all over the world, like Taoism in China or Roman paganism, in this presentation we are going to be going over Celtic Druidry. So, what is Druidry? Celtic Druidry was an ancient spiritual religion inspired by Celtic priesthood. It emphasized a deep connection with nature and concepts such as reincarnation and life after death. Contrary to some popular beliefs, Druids did not live their lives alone as forest hermits. Both women and men were parts of a Nemid or sacred class. Druids served the tribe as either doctors, lawyers, judges, or spiritual leaders. Now, there isn't any sacred text or written history on Druidry, since important facts were passed down orally, which can be a little frustrating for modern researchers, but it did help the Druids preserve their teachings and keep people from altering them. According to Celtic Druidry ritual Techniques and Magical Practices by Ellen Everett Hopman, which is a book I got from the Humboldt Library database, Druids presided at divinations and sacrifices and praised gods and goddesses, but the primary task for all Druids was to follow an intellectual path. So, going into historical roots and modern revival, there is a lot of mystery with figuring out the actual history of Druids. But Druidism is thought to be part of a Celtic and Gaulish culture in Europe 2nd century BC. One of the earliest accounts of Druidry was written by Julius Caesar during 59 through 51 BC, where men and women were either divided into Druids or nobles. However, historians gained a lot of knowledge on Druidry through Roman writers. What they got was that they worshipped more than one god, and they also had female gods. Unfortunately, their practices have likely been exaggerated or twisted into what people want it to be. For example, Druidic human sacrifice has been recorded, but there's no actual evidence to support that it was something going on. Unlike a lot of religions, Druidry cannot be traced to a single founder, but it has multiple origins that reflect the influence of many historical developments. Hundreds of years after the extinction of ancient Druids, people began to claim the term Druid in the 18th century. In the 1770s, many British fraternal groups took on the role of the Druid identity, the most known group being the Ancient Order of Druids, which was formed in London 1771, and it is still operating today. I have the picture of it right in this corner. So, going into Druid places, Druids were the sons and daughters of nobles. They were teachers, and their task was to hand down knowledge of sacred trees, animals, plants, stones, and landscape details. Their places of worship were areas secluded like forest or stone circles, the most famous being Stonehenge in Britain. While it was thought to be a place for worship for them, and it still is to modern pagans and Druids, historians aren't necessarily clear on whether they built Stonehenge or not. And It isn't exactly clear when they came to Britain, but it is believed that they came after Stonehenge was built. Places like Anglesey and Wistman's Woods in Daltmoor are thought to be Druid sites. Druids were believed to be taught in Anglesey since their lore was very complex and it had to be learned by heart rather than written language. It is thought that they would have to spend about 20 years learning. So, practices and rituals. A Druid's life followed the cycle of nature. They worshipped according to 8 holy days, followed by the lunar and solar seasonal cycles. I will name 3 since naming them would take up half of this presentation, and I don't have time for that. So the first one is Yule. And Yule was the winter solstice time, where Druids would sit on mounds of earth throughout the night until the sunrise, when they were reborn. Then there's Imbolc, which took place on February 1st through 2nd, and that was the celebration of spring coming. Lastly, there's Samhain, which was when the last harvest would take place. It was a spiritual holiday where the dead and the living were believed to be closest to each other. It also happens to be on October 31st, which is now the day that we call Halloween. So, to a Druid, things like trees, rivers, or animals, or anything like that were considered to be alive. The number 3 was a significant part in Druidism, like the triscale, which shows these 3 lines coming together in circles, and circles represent the circle of life, seasons, and darkness or light. Everything is part of a web of life, and every action affects a greater whole. They were non-dogmatic, which meant they sought direct experience and understanding rather than following blind faith. They recognized an inward spirit in creations like old trees, giant stones, large bodies of water, or animals, and they were seen to carry spiritual knowledge. But very contrary to popular belief, Druids focused more on worshiping gods and goddesses over magic. They worshipped through songs, crafts, and poetries. They gave thanks to their ancestors by giving them offerings through water, since liquid could reach over to the realm of their ancestors. They gave gifts to the nature spirits by spreading them across the land or giving them to trees. And offerings given to gods were given through fire because the flame was bringing the offerings upwards. Now, what were Druids thought to carry? So there isn't much certainty behind a lot of the aspects of Druidry, but archaeologists found a burial site with surgical instruments as well as items thought to be divination rods. They also found this herb, which was likely a mixture of mugwort and wormwood, which suggests the role of healing and magic in medicine. I wanted to put a picture of these artifacts below, but anytime I tried to look them up online, it was just giving me advertisements. So, Celtic Druids and the Roman invasion. In 1st century AD, Druids faced oppression from the Romans. They first came into contact when the Romans went to conquer Western Europe. Druids were very religious in a way that upset the Romans. There was talk of human sacrifice in Druidry, which was told by Julius Caesar. In AD 54, Emperor Claudius banished Druids, and in AD 60, the governor of England decided to attack their mainland in Anglesey, in hopes that the Druid population would die out quickly. They also destroyed ceremonial sites, and unfortunately, the Celtic Druids were not able to physically stop the Roman army. Now, a really big question in this entire presentation is why people find meaning in Druidism. There could be countless meanings into why people find meaning in a specific religion. For some people, it could be honoring their past and connecting with their heritage to Celtic people. To others, it could be aligning with the natural rhythms of life, like living and dying. In modern Druidry, it encourages spiritual autonomy, which invites self-awareness over following a set guideline of rules. Some practitioners may identify as pagan, Christian, or atheist. But in a modern world filled with technology and less of a connection with the planet, Druidry provides a sense of meaning and closeness to nature and spirituality. I hope that everybody learned a little bit from this presentation. Today we went over what Druidry is, learned about their historical roots and its modern revival, sacred places, practices, and artifacts, the Roman invasion, and why people find meaning in Druidism. Nature worship, as we can see, is not just a religion, it is a lifestyle, especially for the Druids who would put 20 years of their life into learning. They chase knowledge and praise parts of the earth, seeing wisdom in every aspect of it. These are the sources that I used for this presentation. And before I end it, I do want to ask, what are your thoughts on Druidry, and how do you personally connect with nature worship? Thank you. Have a wonderful evening, day, morning.